something you guys might not know about me. Big rich, ex-rugby, drinks, but I am a bit of a nerd on sort of a fundamental level, I guess. It's how the computer games happened. It's how esports happened. I really wish it hadn't. But, I am a nerd. I even have a Funko Pop that I only keep because someone gave it to me. I didn't buy it. It was given to me by a kid. So, Lord of the Rings, Dune, all of that stuff, right? Massive nerd into all nerd culture. But the thing that I never talk about, really, I've talked about Lord of the Rings, talked about Dune, talked about all the other stuff. The one thing I never really talk about is my secret love of Star Trek. And I know that's going to surprise you, but I was a bit of a Trekkie back in the day. Not like them weirdo, freaky, you know the ones that go to conventions and dress up. Although I'm probably in about the same shape as William Shatner now. When I did my media degree, it all comes full circle. One of the lecturers on the course, one of the professors, was one of those types of Trekkies. He had pictures of him in his office, and he was at the conventions dressed up in the Kirk outfit or with the pointy Vulcan ears, or you know what I mean. He was one of them dudes. And so we had a module that was about looking at sort of semiology and representation in Star Trek. No joke. I mean, shit, my degree was crazy. I did a module on the nature of self-reflexive lyrics in hip-hop. And we had to break down Dr. Dre's 2001. Media degrees are fucking garbage, really. But if you've got to waste your time, why not? So he said one of the essays we had to do was we had to write about how progressive Star Trek was and how it was groundbreaking. And we learned about all of the history, like, a little bit of trivia for you guys. First ever interracial kiss on American television, which shows you how fucked up America is. that it was on Star Trek. And so Gene Roddenberry was obviously a very, progressive for the time, I think would be a good way of framing it. But when Next Gen and Deep Space Nine and Voyager were coming out, they stayed committed to Roddenberry's vision, even though he was dead. And by the way, if you know anything about the making of the first series of Next Generation, he was fucking insufferable and an absolute prick. And that's why that season sucks ass, because he was throwing out good ideas and he had final veto. So this is why you end up with a bunch of terrible episodes in season 1. But they stayed true to that vision. And I remember it was just a weird time. It was like, if you ever think outrage culture is new, I think it's gone to an extreme it's never been at before. But outrage culture has already been with us. And I remember when they announced Cisco was going to be a captain. Oh, a black captain in Starfleet. Oh, yeah, it's all so bloody politically correct, isn't it? That was the phrase they used in place of woke back then. I just remember thinking, yeah. Who thinks there's an agenda at play there? And then Janeway, a woman who's a bloody captain. There was women admirals in the fucking first one, in the original series. What? Why are you angry about this now? An admiral is higher than a captain. People were just people have always been stupid, is the point. But it was so enamored with the idea that Star Trek was a bastion of progressive television, right? The essay was essentially write all the ways Star Trek was progressive and had positive representations of people. And listen, without getting into it on Twitch, I hate to break it to people, there's a bunch of really fucked up, coded racial tropes in Star Trek, even in the modern Star Trek. Actually, especially in the modern Star Trek. And I'm not going to bring up anything. I'm just saying the Ferengi are fucked up. And we leave it there. But anyway, because of that, I didn't want to go along with what the assignment was, which was to just say, yep, Star Trek's amazing. It's so progressive. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to, because I didn't feel that way. I could see how the Klingons, were kind of problematic, I guess, right? I was a socialist. I was a lefty, right? So I went against the essay title, and I wrote an essay. I can't tell you the title of it. But basically, I listed all of the ways that representation in Star Trek was actually racially insensitive. And He went fucking mental. He went absolutely fucking crazy. He gave it the lowest mark possible, which was like 36% or something. So it was like basically not a fail. And he said, like, listen, I don't think you're taking this course seriously. I said, why not? I just don't agree with fucking your opinion on Star Trek. That can't be grounds for academic failure, you mad cunt. Now, fortunately, because of the modular nature of degrees in Britain at that time, I could just not pick modules with him on them, and I didn't. And I got to do great stuff instead. All of his stuff all came back to Star Trek. But what a weirdo and a freak. Point being, this is just a setup talking about another garbage article. I do have Star Trek credentials, guys. I have seen all of the main series. I will not do the new stuff. I won't do the stuff on CBS right now. It looks terrible. I have seen clips of it that are terrible. I saw that scene from Discovery where that woman goes, "That's the power of math." And everyone applauds. Yay, science! Fauci in the background. It's awful. It's like it was written by people who've never watched Star Trek. Picard is especially bad because it retcons so much about the world. Because, like, right, the whole point of Star Trek, and they did whole episodes around this, including one, which, by the way, was parodied, or rather paid homage to by Futurama. There's an episode in Star Trek where they go to, like, this planet, distress signal, and they find, like, frozen human in cryostasis that were from our time, because, they always love this. It's not enough that you just draw parallels. Sometimes you have to directly say, here's somebody from our time. Now let's talk about things from our time, And so they thaw out these people. I can't really remember all of the characters, but I remember one dude. And they thaw out this guy who was like a super famous businessman, right? And a millionaire and a billionaire, and he ran all his companies. And Picard is explaining to him, like, in the future, we've eliminated want and greed. We can replicate anything. It's pointless to accumulate it. We don't even use money in the future. We don't fight wars. There's no point to it. And this guy's like, he's completely mind fucked because he's from our time. And because it was next gen, and there was actually sort of like layers to the writing, inexplicably, despite the fact he's an arsehole, they actually do infer he's going to have some sort of use in the modern day, because he just walks onto the bridge for no reason, which, by the way, this is next gen bridge access. It's just a mess. Worf is not doing his job. People just walk on the bridge all the time, like at any moment. I'm not just talking about Q. He can teleport, but people who are just on the ship just come in. Yeah, I want to talk to the captain. Like, this is the fucking bridge of the ship. Anyway, this dude who's been thawed out from back in time walks onto the bridge because he wants to shout at Picard. And Picard's having negotiations with Romulans. And basically, they're like saying, "Oh, yeah, but it's over some shit." And he goes, "He's bluffing. They're bluffing. He's lying. He doesn't know he's trying to trick you, Picard." And it's like, Picard, it's like seasoned, tenured diplomat, supposedly couldn't tell. But because this guy was a high-powered businessman from our time, he has, like, insight. Also, I don't know where Deanna Troi was. She's an empath. She would just hold up her hand and go, you're lying. That would have been it, right? But again, convenience. Anyway, they did loads of stuff like that where it was like just, interesting. But the point is, the world that the current world in Next Gen and beyond is one that's mostly harmonious. The threat now is coming existentially from outside the world in which we live. And then fast forward to Picard, right? We've used the technology from Data to create an army of android slaves that work for the Federation. What? Why? When? What? To what end? It just doesn't make sense. It just wouldn't be happening. And they go on this. So Picard, I can't do it, mate, because it's not even Picard. It's Patrick Stewart playing someone who ain't Picard. It's just fucking trash. So I can't, I watched the first episode. I can't do it. I won't do it. I just won't do that. Picard was a great character because he was the complete sort of opposite to a Kirk. Kirk represented the brash, the brash humanity, essentially an allegory for the American pioneers. You're out there on the final frontier, and you've got to have a bit of cowboy swagger about you to get shit done. I'm not always orthodox, I don't play by the rules, but manifest destiny dictates that I am going to do this shit, and we're going to get there in the end. And so that's what he represents. He's an evolution, if you like, of like John Wayne or Clint Eastwood, just in space. And that's why he gets the ladies. He knocks everyone out with one punch. He's the captain. He's a maverick genius. Then you have a Kirk character, Riker, right? He's never good enough to be a captain. The people who still think like Kirk are obsolete, essentially, at the highest levels of Starfleet. They have their uses, yeah, but you couldn't be a captain in this modern day. And so the evolution of the Starfleet captain now is the thinker, the well-read historian with a yen for ancient architecture and archaeology, and a diplomat, representing the, again, it's smart. And the fact that he has a Riker in the background sort of play off is also intelligent, because you can see the fundamental differences of the style. So, but Picard is private. He doesn't show emotion, even when he's making really tough emotional decisions. I remember when Worf left to go and fight a civil war? Remember when Worf just handed in his commission? Picard just said, all right, yeah, I know why you're doing it. And he had everybody line up and see Worf off, but they didn't, like, hug or cry or high five. There's not, he just, yep, right. And then he said, everyone, return to your duties. That's that. That was Picard. That's why he's great. That's why he's a wicked character. That dude who's, like, really emotional and talking about how he loves Data, and, oh, mate, and the idea that he would, like, invest himself in any of this nonsense rather than just potter around his vineyard. If I was making Picard, right, what I would have done, this is no joke, I'm being deadly serious here, I would have made it like almost like a slice of life series, just Picard in his vineyard in a local community, coming back from Starfleet, trying to reintegrate into society. That's all it would have been. It would have been him trying to get his wine business up and running. It would have been him, maybe you have a couple of episodes where he gets brought in to negotiate a tricky situation and roll back the years as a consultant. But he wouldn't be in a spaceship. He's fucking 90 years old. I think we know from real life, you would never put an elderly man with borderline dementia in charge of anything. So anyway, the reality is, like, that's what that should have been, but it isn't. They made it big bombastic shit. So, Polygon, right? Star Trek needs less logic and more crying. If you want to talk about little weird media campaigns that, like, people sort of haven't talked about so much, a lot of these journalist types have been really up on the idea of pushing Star Trek Discovery because, it's diverse, and it's like, yeah, all of Star Trek's been, historically. So the idea that there's never been a truly diverse Star Trek, even though, as I've said, definitely some things I would go back and change, but certainly nowhere near as despicable as fucking Phantom Menace, which it's just, hey, George, you got any racist caricatures we can use as aliens? And, oh, yeah, got loads, actually. You can tell which race Lucas is racially abusing with his aliens on Phantom Menace. You do know, and I can't even process how anyone signed off on Jar Jar Binks. I cannot process that ever to this day. Regardless, Star Trek's always, it's got a few bumps in the road, let's say, but it's always been a progressive show. But ahead of Discovery coming out, big corporate overlords, CBS, making a show, doing the thing that's now baked into every marketing campaign. This is progressive, and if you think it's bad, you're a chud. That's happening right now with the Lord of the Rings as well. Nobody can criticize anything on its merits. Because they saw how successful it was to explain away the failure of Ghostbusters in 2016, that is now part of the marketing playbook. It's like they look at the dailies. Oh my God, this is terrible. Don't worry, we'll get the websites that we own to write articles basically saying that the reason people don't like it is because they're secret racists. Anyway, Star Trek needs less logic and more crying. What do you mean about that, right? It sets up a scene where they're talking about, they're all having disagreements, because one thing that happens in Discovery apparently is lots of arguments round tables about the ethics and the morality of every decision, which, should drive drama when done right, but the writers are absolute garbage. And they keep trying to do these big overarching storylines where the stakes are so high. Like, that was another great thing about original Star Trek. The stakes were never really that high. It one planet, with the exception of the Borg storyline, but it was like, there was tensions with the Romulans. But, the universe isn't going to fucking end, right? Like, the Borg are here, now we got to do something about that. Okay, we've absolutely wrecked them. Janeway definitely sorted that in the end. And, right? But, like, generally, an episode of Star Trek, it's just low stakes, an exploration of moral dilemma. Great stuff. Disagreements such as these are hardly new to Star Trek. In fact, the paradigmatic Star Trek scene involves a group of people peacefully debating possible complicated issues. But Discovery takes a decidedly unique approach to this trope. The camera glides around Burnham as she speaks, capturing every creased brow and pleading smile, underscoring her feelings even more than her words. Martin Green pours herself into the moment, lowering her voice to a whisper when being sincere and raising it an octave when marshalling hope. She finishes the speech in near wreck, barely fighting back tears. For its detractors, scenes like this are everything that's wrong with the series. Yes, it's terrible writing and it's emotionally cheap. Over its 3.5 seasons, Discovery has established itself as the most openly emotional Star Trek series in which characters talk about their trauma, give each other meaningful hugs, and shed tears in nearly every episode. Discovery explores pathos more thoroughly than any other series in the franchise. In doing so, it underscores an important aspect of humanity, one too often downplayed by the franchise. Now, I do want to point out, this is motherfucking Starfleet, homies. I don't want meaningful hugs. Because one thing, again, original Star Trek understands is there has to be this reserved cautiousness. And you can't emotionally invest in these problems. For example, how many episodes of Star Trek revolve around the Prime Directive? We will not interfere with a civilization, even if it is to save it. And yeah, everyone breaks the fucking Prime Directive. They always hype it up, right? But it is the first rule that goes out the window generally. But, the whole purpose of the Prime Directive, selectively enforced though it is historically, is that even if there is like something ethical, even if we would save lives by giving them, healing technology or whatever it is, we don't do it because it's wrong. It's not fair. And they always have a utilitarian approach in Starfleet, famously from the original series. It's always the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few. And, obviously this opens up a resonancy and a poignancy when these moments happen. Think about when Spock sacrifices himself, and Kirk and Spock are bros, and you have that Wrath of Khan moment, and he just does the Vulcan sign, doesn't he? And Kirk does it back, and he's fucking devastated. He's devastated, and that. You sit down, your, veteran grandfather who was like shut down emotionally because of the shit he saw, and you show him Wrath of Khan, he'll cry at that scene. It'll break him because of the lore and the mythology around those characters, because we know Spock actually is only half Vulcan. There's a human, so even though he's doing it in a cold and emotionless way, he's also made a very human sacrifice. That he does have a human side. It creeps out on occasion. It's great. And it's good writing. If Picard and the boys, if they were all walking around like, come here, Worf, I'm so glad that your spine has re-healed, because for some reason, even though we can bring Picard back from the dead and give him a mechanical heart, if you're a Klingon with a bad back, you're just fucked. If that was happening, it'd be shit, wouldn't it? It'd be garbage. You can't have just emotional high points all the time, and it's unrealistic. It's a military outfit. But anyway, right, they say here It mentions, who can forget William Shatner stifling a cry during Captain Kirk's eulogy for Spock? You'll notice, stifled. Right? And it talks about a few moments from the past. Good moments. Moments better than anything CBS will have created. But as powerful as these moments may be, Trek usually treats empathy as a challenge, a problem to overcome for the greater good. Yeah. As it usually is. Take the classic episode, The City on the Edge of Forever, it is a classic, in which a delusional McCoy disrupts the time stream, inadvertently preventing the death of social worker Edith Keeler, thus allowing her to found a humanitarian movement. But her work has the unintended consequence of delaying the US entry into World War II, which, by the way, classic American exceptionalism. Yeah, you won the war. Yeah, we get it. Yeah, brilliant. That was on telly. That's fine. Europe was, we just, Russia didn't do anything. Which allows the Nazis to kill far more people than they otherwise would have. As Spock describes it in his characteristically blunt manner, Edith Keeler must die. To be sure, the death scene honours the pain and sorrow Kirk feels as he prevents McCoy from saving Keeler, but the message is clear. Because the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few, Kirk's emotions take a back seat to the demands of logic. So yeah. It sets all this up, and you can see here they really have gone to town on writing this, right? For some of Discovery's critics, this plot, it talks about this whole nonsense. Like, because you haven't watched it like me, it's just going to be gobbledygook. Anyway, for some of Discovery's critics, this plot resolves too easily, the equivalent of hugging it out instead of facing the issue. But that reading misplaces the focus of the Zora debate. The goal of the debate isn't to comb through legal proceedings, but to allow participants to have their feelings recognised and validated. It feels marvellous being seen, Zora says. In these scenes, Discovery revises the utopian future that has always been at the heart of Star Trek. The humans of the future reach their best selves, not by overcoming their emotions, but by recognising them and caring for them, in themselves and others. Discovery insists that empathy is an effective way to seek out new life and new civilizations. Michael Burnham asks the Federation Council, who do we want to be? Discovery answers boldly, firmly, and yes, tearfully, fully human, both logical and emotional. It just flies contrary to everything canonically Star Trek is about. And it's like, I don't mind exploring new ideas, and I don't mind media going to, new places. I'm not one of those guys. I'm not like a fan in the sense that I'll be like, sending abuse to people because they acted in Star Trek, or played a character I didn't like or whatever. I'm not deranged. But this is why it's like you can write a sci-fi series, right? That's just this and build the world and it doesn't have to be Star Trek because it isn't Star Trek. And people who've watched Trek don't recognize this as Trek. It's like got the name. It's like the new movies. They're just bad. Like they're just objectively bad and not in line with anything else. I mean, by the way, the next gen movies as well are fucking insanely bad. Like Nemesis with fucking bald Tom Hardy Picard's not even the same dude. It's like, Picard, like whenever he got some time off from Starfleet, he'd been down on some ancient planet and be pottering around in like dressed like the fucking man from Del Monte, digging up ancient civilizations, finding alien trilobites and shit like that. That was his idea of a good time. And then, right, you get into the movies and there's like a scene in one of them, I can't remember which, because the movies don't count. And he's riding around on a buggy, like shooting guns. It's like, why? This Picard would hate this. So anyway, Star Trek does not need less logic and more crying. It needs good writing and compelling storylines. And I've said this before. If you want to see a show that is true to the spirit of Star Trek, even though it's essentially a comedy, I think Orwell, I know, you see, the journalists that want you to like this, they did a bunch of numbers on the Orwell. The Orwell, for me, is the spiritual successor to Star Trek, even though it is more broadly comedic. But, I went back and watched some of that stuff recently. Those episodes really hold up. And they deal with some fucking weighty topics. There's an entire episode where they being down to the planet, and it's a planet that has a social credit system. Ooh boy, and they explore that. You have one of the characters' children. They're from a society of only men, and their child is born a woman. And it'll, and it's like they wanna have the reassignment surgery, and it's like, fucking hell, this is like, sorry, the Orville. It's because I'm reading. This is literally 1984 every day by Ben Shapiro. I've got Orwell on my brain. The Orville, it is the Orville. Sorry, I've just got George Orwell in my brain for life. It's just there. But anyway, they deal with some fucking weighty topics in that show. And these journalists will tell you, oh, it misses the mark tonally, and all these motherfuckers do is sit around in a fucking prayer circle crying and saying, why we must come together and learn to love each other in the middle of a fucking war zone. And every week the universe is going to explode or implode, depending. It's just trash. It's like, what makes Star Trek good is just using it as a vehicle to explore moral dilemmas. And the Orville does that better than any of this shit coming out on CBS. I find it absolutely nauseating garbage. So no, it does not need more crying.